After a long wait through Season 3A, Anne and her friends have finally returned to the fantastic froggy world of Amphibia, though it has been turned into a parched and desolate wasteland, bleak, somber, and lifeless. Anne and the planters and Sasha and hopefully Marcy have a lot of work to do if they are going to repair this degraded, bleak, blighted world. But in order to face the future, one needs to have some level of awareness of the past, and this I believe the show will provide. In a teaser trailer for Season 3B, the show depicts a few short sketches of Andrias's past. Whether we will get these sketches in the upcoming episodes, Commander Anne and Sprivey, is questionable, but we might. And even if we don't, we are definitely moving in the direction of knowing more about Andreas. He is going to be an integral part of Season 3B, I believe, and not just in this, ooh, I'm this exquisite, evil, cackling villain kind of way. I'm not saying he's a good person, or that the show will start treating him sympathetically. I am saying that the show is going to delve more into the contours of his mind and his worldview and all the experiences he's had, and his past relationships and the dissolution of those relationships is a major part of his past. So let's focus on the few wisps of information the show has given us and what these wisps of information say about the direction the show is going to take regarding Andreas and his friends. The three of them have similar color palettes to the Calamity Trio, Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. Could they have similar personalities as well? There is something Jungian to this. The echoes of the past reoccurring in the present, albeit in different circumstances. Jung is often misread and misconstrued, and so a lot of backwards and retrograde opinions are ascribed to him both by his admirers and by his critics, even though it doesn't really fit his actual worldview and philosophy. Jung is often associated with these very rigid, preconceived roles and fitting all human beings and all stories told by human beings into these mechanized, fatalistic roles and structures and relationships. And that's not really true to his thought at all. He is a far cry away from this fixed, unchanging, Platonist view of the world. Jung's ideas are much more based on the old Taoists and, to a lesser extent, Buddhists and Hindus, in that there is a link between change and constancy. Things are ever changing, they are always dynamic, and the past is not a perfect reflection of the present, but the same rules and same basic principles still tend to govern our ambitions, our longings, our conceptions of ourselves and others, our triumphs and our failures. Just like water is never the same as the water that was there a couple days ago, let alone a couple hundred years ago, but it usually flows down the same passageways, and even if those passageways change over time, such as when a river carves a canyon over millions of years, the basic principles of the flow of the water are still constant. Jung's thought is something similar. There's archetypes as such, which are these basic ideas that do not control experience, but do govern it. The grand journey that most people know through Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which is very heavily based off Jung, even though I don't think Campbell always necessarily grasps the little nuances of Jung's thought. You have marriages, funerals, grand triumphs and tragedies, moments of isolation and moments of connection. These structures persist. They are the basic foundation of experience, and thus the basic foundation of storytelling. That is not to say that the forms that these take are trans-historical, and that they are not based on specific cultures and specific time periods. They absolutely are. These archetypes, which are different from archetypes as such, these archetypes are culturally dependent. And they do change, and people can very easily change from one archetype to the next, just as you change how you view yourself, and just as others can view you in many different ways throughout your life. These archetypes change as societies change, but they change along principles that can be considered lucidly and astutely once you look at the big picture. There is dynamism, there is energy, there is constant fluctuation, but it occurs along these basic forms, these basic ideas of human triumph and tragedy, and sorrow and joy, of connection and dissolution, of finding someone you love or losing them. These basic forms are the same, it's just that the shape they take is consistently changing. The manifestations of these ideas are always shifting. And I think you see something similar with Anne, Sasha, and Marcy versus Andreas and his two friends. So I'm sorry if I kind of lost you on my extended Jungian rambling. Obviously, Anne, Sasha, and Marcy are not an exact reflection of Andreas and his friends. They are different people with different lives, living in a different time period and coming from very different circumstances. And yet, the relationships between these three are markedly similar to, as far as we know, the relationship dynamics between Andreas and his friends. You still, it seems, have the wit, the heart, and the strength. These basic impulses are the same, even though they take very different forms throughout time. But of course, figuring out the correlations is a different story. Should we consider Andreas' wit because he's quite clever and scheming, and because he's so closely associated with Marcy, who was also wit? Or was he heart, like Anne? This would be based not only on them both being associated with blue, but also with a few comments that Andreas makes to Anne during True Colors. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But all of this, of course, one could have ascertained simply by what we had already gotten before this new preview, though the new preview provides a lot more credence, I think, to these little hints we have hitherto gotten. The little preview does give us quite a bit of other information as well. We see the old king of Newtopia, probably Andrias' father, a somber-looking, aged, scarred man, probably close to the end of his life. If he has anything close to the same lifespan as Andrias, it's possible that he has been ruling for centuries, if not millennia, at this point. But his rule is coming to an end, most likely. He doesn't look like he could rule for much longer, so perhaps he is teaching Andrias how to rule in his stead, so that Andrias can become the new king, and this involves showing Andrias a lot of dark and more than a little sordid secrets of Newtopia. How Andrias responds to these secrets, compared to how the other two respond to these secrets when they find them out, is, I believe, a major component to why that friendship fell apart as it did. This would thus not be a case of Andrias just being this pure megalomaniacal villain who sneers and cackles, but someone who has complicated feelings about the legacy that his father has entrusted to him. I'm not saying the show wants to make Andrias sympathetic, and I'm not saying it should. I really hate the strand of banal fan discourse that seems so common these days, in which a character can either be sympathetic or not, relatable or not, worth redeeming or not, while the actual human feelings and resentments and longings and passions and all the things that really matter about people get forgotten. This preview, brief as it is, lingers on the affection Andrias clearly has for the little pink frog, who would later steal the music box. This little pink frog who is probably an ancestor of the planters, based on family resemblances. It's possible that this little pink frog found out what these dark secrets were that Newtopia was hiding, and this is why they look so distraught and so dismayed. Andreas, by this point, probably already knows. And while he, at this point, may feel a little uneasy about these secrets, he is more than ready to fulfill what he believes to be his role as the king of Newtopia. And so that drives a rift between these close friends. Andrias believes this is just a small conflict, but it later leads to this little pink frog stealing the music box and most likely taking it to Earth, where it remains until Marcy finds it in that book, and Anne steals it from the shop, and they are all transported to Amphibia. Of course, there are more details that the show needs to fill in. Like, there's a lot about the Ohms that we see in the preview that I'm sure will be explained when we come to the two Ohm-focused episodes, Olm Town Road and Mother of Ohms. But the emotional core of the fallout between these three, I believe we already have in the desperation of that little pink frog and how Andreas responds to it. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else can. What do you think is going to happen to these three friends? What do you think is going to be revealed about them? Whatever it is, I'm sure it will be significantly more interesting than the admittedly rather superficial Season 3A episodes that quite annoyed or at least disconcerted a lot of us. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.